Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Bratwurst and Beyond, where we talk all about life in Germany. My name's Kai, and I moved here from the US more than 5 years ago. Today we're going to do a little tour of my apartment in Berlin. I say little because I intentionally chose to live in a smaller than average apartment here. And while there are definitely some pros and cons to living in smaller spaces, that's not really going to be my focus today. Though, just to provide some context, I live in a studio apartment that's about 50 square meters in size, which is just about 500 square feet. It's located on the top floor of a mid-rise historic building known locally as an Altbau in the Charlottenburg-Wilmersdorf district. Since this unit is on the top floor, just under the building's roof, it's called a Dachgeschosswohnung, or top floor apartment. Personally, I found living in a Dachgeschosswohnung pretty awesome because of its location in the city and because my unit faces a beautiful lush green courtyard. It's like I live up in the trees with lots of leaves and birdsong just outside. But as I mentioned in another video, there are also some cons to this apartment. For example, it does get a little uncomfortable up here on the hottest days, especially during the recent heat wave when I decided to check into a hotel. In fact, because it gets so hot up here in the summers, I've decided it's time for me to move on to a new apartment as soon as I can. Of course, it can be difficult to find apartments here, particularly in big cities like Berlin. Please see my earlier video on this topic if you're interested in learning how to find your first apartment or strategies to help with your apartment search here. Anyways, all through our tour today, I'm going to point out some of the things that make my apartment and other apartments in Germany unique when compared to those in the US. Okay, let's get started with the tour. Los geht's! Alright, so when you first step foot into my apartment, you'll come into the entry or foyer. As you can see, it's fairly small and has just enough room for a shoe cabinet and a little bench. Now, there are two things here that are a little different from what you might see in a typical US apartment. First, there's this crazy bolt lock. I was really surprised the first time I saw this. It seemed pretty excessive. I asked the realtor about it, and he just said it was German security, and it seems many apartments in Berlin have this, but I really do think it's overkill. Anyways, the entry also has this ancient-looking intercom. I never had something like this in any of my US apartments. It connects to the front door of the building, and if someone rings the bell next to my name at the front door downstairs, I can buzz them in using this. It takes a little getting used to, and it can be annoying when random people just ring my bell when there's a mix-up or someone else in the building is not answering. But generally it works well. The last thing I want to show you here is right next to the foyer. It's a small utility room that makes for an excellent little walk-in closet. Okay, moving on to another room connected to the foyer, here's the bathroom. It's got your standard sink, tub and shower, and toilet. But one thing you'll notice right away that's different is that there's a washer-dryer in the bathroom. In the US, washing machines are usually kept in dedicated rooms or closets. But here in Germany, you'll often find washing machines either in the bathroom or kitchen. Personally, I found that this is a more effective use of space, and it's worked really well for me. I actually don't miss having a separate room or closet for the washer at all. There's also a window in the bathroom for ventilation, since many German apartments do not have ventilation fans like in the US. But again, I really find I prefer having access to the fresh air. And the toilet here is dual flush, which really helps save water. Also, in Germany, it's very common to keep a squeegee like this one in the shower to help keep the glass clean, and it seems to work pretty well. I never had one of these in the US since I always had shower curtains. Oh wait, there's one more thing here that's different in German bathrooms, the heated towel rack. In older apartments, these will only work in the winter, but in newer apartments, they'll work year-round. These help dry your towels quickly and prevent mold, since there's no fan in here, remember? And I have to say, there's nothing like drying yourself off with a nice warm towel after a shower in the wintertime. Alright, now let's move on to the main living area. Since this is a studio apartment, the kitchen, living room, and bedroom are all in one big room. But let's start with the kitchen. For those of you who've watched my videos before, this kitchen might be pretty familiar since I've used it as my background, including for this video. Now there are several things about this kitchen worth mentioning. The kitchen itself is interesting because I had to buy the entire thing when I first moved in here. You see, in Germany, it's common for apartments to come without kitchens. Yes, you heard that right. In most German apartments, kitchens are not included. Instead, many Germans move their kitchens around with them. And I'm actually going to do the same thing when I move from here into my new apartment. Personally, I find that this system is kind of wasteful and unnecessarily complicated. But it does allow for you to have a kitchen designed exactly to your specifications, which I guess can be nice even though it ends up costing a lot of money. Now let's take a closer look at the features in my small kitchen. The stove is an induction stove, which is the most common type in Germany. I used to swear by gas stoves in the US, but I really like this induction stove even better. It heats very evenly, it's easy to clean, and it doesn't pollute the air in the apartment. As you can see, the oven is a bit smaller than most US ovens, which is also very common here. While you might not be able to fit a large Thanksgiving turkey in here, it will easily handle everything else. The fridge and freezer are also smaller here, which, like all the other smaller appliances, is very common in German apartments. This means that I go to the grocery store every day or two, which is what many other Germans do too. So I find this fridge is more than enough. Okay, a couple other things that are different in most German kitchens are that there's no garbage disposal and the trash and recycle bins are built directly into the cabinets. At first, I really thought I would miss the garbage disposal, but I managed just fine without it. And I love having the bins built in so it's easy to access. Moving on to the living room, everything is pretty standard and straightforward here. This is pretty similar to what you would find in a US living room, except for the roof window and the radiator. Most older apartments in Germany have radiators for heating, while newer apartments here are typically built with underfloor heating. Finally, let's take a look at the bedroom area. Again, like the other areas, it's pretty standard with space for a bed and end tables. There's another radiator here, which is nice on cold winter nights. Here it's also worth highlighting the windows, which are these awesome German tilting windows that I've talked about in other videos. And lastly, I want to mention another thing that's different in Germany versus the US, and that's the separate covers on the bed. People in the US may think this is odd, but let me tell you, it's great. You won't believe how much better you can sleep with your own cover. So as you can see, there are some interesting features and differences in German apartments. I personally think that most of these things are much better, but I think knowing about them in advance may make it easier for some people from the US to make the transition to living in Germany. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for joining me on this tour of my Berlin apartment. And, as always, I hope this information was helpful. If you liked this video, please be sure to hit the like button. And make sure that you subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss any future videos. Thanks again for watching. Tschüss, bis später!